Sophie Foster, and welcome to Can We Talk About That, the podcast in Oxford County where we break down gender-based violence in our everyday lives. On this episode, we are going to be talking about something pretty interesting. We're actually going to be talking about healthy communication. Before we get into today's conversation, I do just want to give a warning that we are talking about things like abuse, like violence, and if you need to take a break at any time or maybe just pause to reflect on something, please feel free. We just want you to take care of yourself while you're listening. If you do need support, or maybe a friend or family member needs support, please reach out to the DASO crisis line at 1-800-265-1938. It's open 24/7, it's free, and it's confidential. Please follow, like, and subscribe to our show, whether it's on Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. The more support we get, hopefully the more we can get out in our community and share these messages. For today's episode, I've invited Joanna Parker back from Ingamo Homes. She's the transitional support worker here. And we are going to be talking about what healthy communication looks like and how we can do it. So I know most of our episodes are about, what does abuse look like? What are the red flags? What not to do? But today we're going to talk more about what we can do, which is, I think, really powerful on its own. So just to start, maybe can you explain what healthy communication even means? What does that look like?
I think healthy communication is about connection as opposed to control. There needs to be connection in order to have healthy communication.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think that a lot of us struggle to kind of understand that we're trying to connect with the people we love. And sometimes we get lost in how we feel. We're upset, we're hurt. And instead of trying to connect, we get lost in, this is how I feel, listen to me,
yes.
I want to be heard, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then that's when it kind of turns into control, without us even knowing that that's what we're trying to do.
Right. Yes, there needs to be that space to listen and to really hear the other person, to make a connection that is valued by both people. There needs to be importance in that connection for someone to be able to pause and take the time to really hear someone, to really connect with them.
Well, and two people, let's say, communicating, they both have different needs, they both have different wants, they're different people. And so to connect, you have to care about what they need in that conversation.
Yes.
Which is hard, but that's kind of, where it starts.
Yeah. Like listening to really listen and to hear the person instead of listening in order to respond. Like you're listening to someone, but in the back of your head, you're already thinking about what you're going to say to them next. No, just pause and really hear that person.
I mean, I think a lot of us kind of grew up in homes, if I'm thinking of just, generations before us, where, feelings weren't really valued. You shouldn't talk about your feelings. Or maybe, your feelings are too big. And so we weren't really given the space to learn how to healthily communicate how we feel and what we need. What do you think are some common habits that we fall into today because we don't know how to do healthy communication?
I think we can sometimes seek to control the other person in our communication when we're not maybe practicing either tools that we've developed or relearning sort of what that looks like for us. So falling into habits of yelling or making assumptions, or like I talked about earlier, listening to respond instead of really listening to listen. Some of those things I think can be easy pitfalls to fall into.
I think when we hear control, we think of, being loud, calling names, all the things we think of with abusive behavior that we
that we see in movies and TV, but there's also ways of controlling with like guilt and shame and being passive aggressive and making little comments to hurt their feelings. That's also a form of control too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard.
And then just unhealthy communication,
Yeah, unhealthy communication. Exactly. So, okay, maybe can you expand on what are some signs, maybe? Let's say it could be romantic, it could be maybe with your parents or with your siblings or with your friends, that it's getting unhealthy. Maybe the conversation is getting unhealthy.
I think if you're walking on eggshells all the time, or you are thinking that everything you say is wrong, or you're not ever being heard, or your words are being misconstrued all the time, some of these things are certainly red flags that maybe there's some unhealthy communication happening. Those are a few.
Yeah, you said something else in a training that we did once, and I was like, ooh, that's such a good point. You said something about, if you're always using always and never, which I just did.
I do that a lot.
If you're using always and never, or like that right there is unhealthy, because we never always do something.
Right.
Or never do something.
Yeah.
And so you're doing these blame statements.
Yes.
Maybe you can explain that better than I just did. But
No, I mean, I think that that's totally bang on. It's about generalizing those things. Like, you always go to yelling, or you always blame me for whatever. It's
or nothing's ever good enough.
Never hear me when I
Yeah.
talk. And I think those sweeping generalizations are really common, and like I said, I've caught myself doing it as well. It's very normal, but I think acknowledging that's maybe not helpful or necessary, and it isn't always, and it isn't never. Obviously, it's coming up because often this is happening, and you need to address that, but sometimes using those always or never thing can just feel really like there's no hope. Like, if I'm always doing that, why are we continuing to have this conversation or something like that?
Right.
And I think too, along with that, is bringing up things that happened ages ago that 10 years ago you whatever. It needs to be, having a healthy dialogue and healthy communication needs to be here and now. You have to be able to deal with what's at hand and not bring up past regression, like past issues, and try and use them as leverage moving forward. So it needed to be dealt with at the time, and
and maybe it still needs to be dealt with, but that's a separate conversation.
Right.
Let's deal with the issue that's happening
that's
here.
right.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so hard for people to come together in conversations without shutting down, or without, getting really mad and yelling and saying something mean? Why do you think it's so hard for people to kind of use healthy communication tools?
I think in order to be having a healthy conversation and using healthy communication, there has to be a certain amount of vulnerability there. And if you've not felt that you were in a safe space to be vulnerable, if it's not safe for you to be vulnerable in that space, in that conversation, then it's going to be really difficult to have healthy communication and healthy dialogue around an issue.
Yeah. Well, and if you can't bring up how you feel or what you need, you're not going to connect with the other person.
Right.
Which, then how well is your relationship doing if you can't connect with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it is all about safety, like you were saying.
Yeah, and if you've not been in homes or in relationships or situations that feel safe, then being vulnerable just simply isn't an option.
Why do you think, or what do you think is the best changes for people listening that they could make to have healthier communication? If they're just focusing on themselves, what can I do better? What would you say?
I think looking at, your own contribution to that dialogue, using some time to pause and to reflect on what you want to say and what your needs are and what needs to happen for it to be a healthy and productive conversation. And I think too, really practicing some of the skills of listening, making eye contact, really being engaged, like being genuine in your interest. Again, as long as it's safe for you to be vulnerable to do that. And I think that that's really important. Listening, effective listening, embracing the pause, and letting there be silence. A lot of people are really uncomfortable with silence, but I think that there's a lot of power in silence. It allows us some space to process our thoughts a little bit, knowing that you can maybe even just step away from the conversation for a few minutes and then come back to it.
I hate silence.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable. Well, and for me, like, I want to get in there and fix it, So I don't like the silence. But that is something that's a skill that I need to work on.
And I think that that's a really good point even to bring up too, that you say that you want to get in there and fix it, because I think that that's another part of that healthy communication, is acknowledging that we can't necessarily fix it. That sometimes it's just about acknowledging where you are and where the other person is and what needs to happen to move forward. And sometimes that's on the other person. It's not, we can't jump in and fix things, but we really want to. And I think that when we have healthy communication and we have, we're learning to use the tools that we have, it's easy to go to that place, but it's sort of a foundation for moving forward and having future healthy dialogue, to be able to acknowledge that all we can do is make some shifts in our own behavior.
Yeah, we can only control what we do.
That's right.
We can't control what other people do.
Right.
Yeah, and that makes, we have to do work in order to stop, because all of us do things that are unhealthy in communication.
Yes.
And we're all learning as we go.
Yes.
And whether we're starting at the beginning or we're halfway or we're at near the end, whatever the end looks like, of being a perfect healthy communicator, if that's a thing. We, every day you get thrown different scenarios and different contexts and different people that you have to figure out how to communicate with. And I think a lot of us are just on autopilot. And so we do have to think about and pause and listen. And you always say too, like, be curious.
Yes.
As to what's going on with the other person and what's going on with me.
Yeah.
What's coming up for me.
Yeah, we tend to jump to judgment of ourselves and others instead of being curious about what might be going on internally for ourselves or in a situation outside of ourselves.
Yeah. So you mentioned, growing up in a home that's, maybe there's yelling, maybe there's silent treatment. I know some of my friends grew up with silent treatment, and that's hard, and that becomes normal. What would you say to someone who's looking at this, listening to this, and saying like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? How can they get better at healthy communication if that's what's normal?
Yeah, I think acknowledging sort of where you've come from and what you've inherited as tools of communication is a really great place to start. When we can acknowledge that in ourselves, it creates space to grow and do things differently. So really having, doing some work around, what that looks like, and what I can do differently. And again, back to just be curious about it instead of judging it, maybe just looking at it as that's where I came from, and I really seek to communicate in a different way moving forward. And gathering tools and using them and knowing that it's not perfect. You're going to make mistakes and that it takes time and it's hard. Well,
in a healthy relationship, you're both going to slip up.
Yep.
And it's about taking accountability and moving forward and working on that together. Like, healthy relationships still have conflict.
Yes.
It's that you do it in a safe, healthy way.
Yes. Healthy conflict is respectful, and you can step away from it and come back to it. You can You can have tough discussions, but again, you're looking at being curious about it instead of judging. And you're not seeking to change that other person, but rather create shifts either in ourselves or being able to respectfully and within safe and healthy boundaries, let that other person know what their behavior is doing, like how it's affecting you.
So for our last question for the show, maybe just to wrap up, do you have any favorite tips or tools or tricks maybe that you would give to people who are wondering how they can get better at this, starting today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think starting with curiosity, instead of reacting, getting curious, asking, what am I really feeling right now? What's underneath what that person just said? Also try journaling. When you have a tough conversation, practicing journaling can really help. It just really helps you reflect on maybe what felt good and what you wanted to try differently next time. And so there's a lot of power in that. Be curious about things instead of looking at yourself with a critical or judgmental frame, and really practicing grounding, putting your hand on your heart. Healthy communication is a skill. It's something that we develop over time. And like anything, it gets stronger the more you practice it, and the more we're curious about some of these things in our lives, the more space we create for the willingness to change.
Yeah, that's great advice. Somewhere to start, like for all of us, we're all working on this. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know most of our episodes are about what not to do, or maybe this is what red flags look like. So it's really nice to have you come on and talk about options of what we can all do better.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and we hope you liked this episode, and we'll see you on our next one.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Can We Talk About That? This episode gave us an opportunity to kind of see the options of what we can work towards as opposed to what not to do, which I think is really helpful. Sometimes we need to reflect on the model that we want to be as opposed to what we shouldn't be doing. Sometimes it's hard and we get lost in the overwhelmingness of what we shouldn't be doing and what's wrong with what we're doing. So it's nice to have the hopeful kind of thing to aspire to. So thank you so much for Joe for coming on. If anything in this conversation maybe came up for you, or maybe you're starting to notice that maybe you yourself have things to work on and you just want help, please feel free to reach out to the Domestic Abuse Services Oxford Crisis Line. It's open 24/7, it's free, and it's confidential. The toll-free number is 1-800-265-1938. We'll be back with more conversations as I sit down with experts in our local community and talk about gender-based violence and hopefully break it down.